Mr. Salway and Mr. Burns' previous lessons on the new conflict and tension topic. So our title for today is on the screen: How were Germany's allies treated after the war? If you want to get that down for us, and then we'll move on to what we're going to be looking at in today's lesson. Right, so first kind of task, as has been with the previous lessons, is a medicine kind of starter knowledge recap. So on the screen we have our three Renaissance heroes. We've got Vesalius, Pare, and Harvey. Can you tell us what impact each of those men has had on medicine and why they were kind of important as well? If you'd like to pause the video at this point and have a go at that task for us, that'd be great, and then we'll move on once you've done that. Right, so on the screen now we have two maps. One of Europe before World War I in 1914 and one of Europe after World War I in 1919, when the treaties were starting to kind of break up the empires of the losing countries. As you can see, borders for countries were changed. Some countries lost quite a lot of land, some countries gained land from others, and completely new countries were created as well because of the treaties that were signed after World War I. So what we'd like you to do is to look at these two questions that have just appeared on screen now. Question one: who were the major winners and who were the major losers in 1919 after World War I? And also, what do you think were the aims of the peacemakers in making these territorial or land changes? As a bit of a challenge on top of question two, could you also consider which of the big three would be happiest that the new countries had been created, and try and explain a little bit why he would be kind of happy that this has happened. Okay. Again, if you want to pause the video and have a go at those tasks, that would be great. Right, next, so we're going to look at kind of the main aspect of the lesson today in terms of how were Germany's allies treated after the war. So we focused on kind of the four main European countries that were allies with Germany. So we've got Austria, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Turkey. Now, your first task is to basically go through this document, which should have been attached to your work by your history teacher, is to go through this document and highlight the fair demands that were made by the big three and the unfair demands that were made by the big three in two different colours. We've got green and red on the PowerPoint, but they can be any two different colours. Now, how you might want to do that is either by opening up the document on your laptop and just using the highlighter tool to highlight on the document itself. You can, if you wish, print the document off if you've got the capability to, and highlight kind of manually yourself. Or if you can't do either of those two previous options, if you kind of look at the document or open the document up and just kind of create a table if you prefer, one with fair at the top, the other side unfair, and just create a list of the fair and the unfair demands made on each of the countries. Now, a key part of this section of the conflict and tension kind of scheme is the significance of how Turkey dealt with the first treaty that was given to them. It's really important that we understand the first treaty that Turkey was given, and obviously because of how they reacted, then the second treaty that they were given as well. So we'd like you to just write a paragraph on your lined paper or however you're recording your notes for this. Just explain for us why it was significant or why it was important that Turkey had two treaties given to it by the big three. Okay. Now, as a challenge, I'd like you to think back to the Treaty of Versailles and think whether the Treaty of Versailles was fair compared to what has happened to the other countries, so Austria, Bulgaria, Hungary, Turkey, and their treaties. And also, if you can, this is a bit of a challenge, how would Germany or Germans have felt after seeing how its allies were treated by the big three? Would they think that it would be fair or unfair? Again, if you want to pause the video at this point, have a go at those tasks for me, and then we will move on. Okay, thank you. Right, next for us is a source-based question. We know you all absolutely love these. So the question is, how useful are sources B and C to a historian studying opinions about the Treaty of Versailles? Now you've got to use the sources, obviously, and your contextual or own knowledge. Now this question is worth 12 marks, so it's quite a big source-based question, bigger than the ones they're kind of used to with the other topics that we study. So, first job, as per the instructions underneath the question, could you bug the exam questions? So box the command word, underline any key words. Okay. Right, what I have picked out, how useful for your command word, that's telling us what to kind of focus on within the question itself. And the keywords, obviously the sources, we've got to look at those, framing it in terms of the Treaty of Versailles, and using the sources and our own knowledge as well. All of those are important aspects to answering this question. Okay, so our sources, all right, we have source B, which is a German cartoon published in 1919, a very famous one that you may have seen before in lessons, all right, and we have also source C from Princess Blucher, writing in 1920. Now, she was an English woman who had married a member of the German royal family. So she has a bit of kind of perspective from both sides, so to speak, of the war. All right. So what we'd like you to do, you should have had a second document that looks a little bit like the little kind of boxes on the slide now. So we have source B, and then a blank box, and I have source C and a blank box next to it as well. Now, what we'd like you to do is to try and explain why, how useful source B and source C are to a historian studying opinions about the Treaty of Versailles. Now, You can kind of highlight and underline the key aspects of the source itself. It's trying to explain why each is important when looking at the Treaty of Versailles, but also don't forget to include your own knowledge as well. So really think about what the Germans felt about the Treaty of Versailles. Really think about what we've learned in this video lesson and how Germany's allies had been treated as well. Did that make opinions change about the Treaty of Versailles in any way? Also, maybe consider the Big Three as well and their opinions on the treaty. So think about Clemenceau, Lloyd George, and Wilson. How did they feel about the Treaty of Versailles, and were they kind of matching up to the opinions given within source B and source C? Now that should be plenty for you to kind of fill your blank boxes with. Okay, if you wish, you can consider the opinions of the populations in other countries as well. So you might want to think about what the French population felt about the Treaty of Versailles, whether it was harsh enough or not. The same for the British population as well, if you want to add a little bit extra into your source work for this question. Okay. Right. Lastly, for today, either on your notes or the work that you've completed today on your lined paper, whatever, write down 3 things that you didn't know before the start of the video lesson today. And also, as a bit of a challenge, I'd like you to write down 2 questions that you would like to ask about the lessons that have already been done with Mr. Salway and Mr. Byrne, or anything in the previous work that you've been doing whilst at kind of home during lockdown, or if you have any questions about what's going to happen in the rest of this topic. So it might be about how disputes are dealt with further down the line after learning what Turkey have done today. It might be about how the countries deal with Hitler in terms of the international community further down the line, etc. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask your teacher, pop those on your work as well. And then obviously don't forget to submit your work, please, to your teacher by the deadline that they have set for you. Okay. Right, have a good week, Year 10. See you later.